I guess we can get started, and as people are joining, they'll just catch up. So welcome everyone to the 2022 National Postdoctoral Association Race and Ethnicity Equity Summit. And good afternoon to everyone, and welcome to session number 3, which is on thriving as a postdoc. And as I welcome everyone, I would just like to quickly introduce myself. I'm Vipul Sharma, and I will serve as the moderator for today's session. And I work as Assistant Director for Postdoctoral Affairs at the University of Chicago, and I also serve as the co-chair of NPA Diversity Task Force. I will quickly display some of the housekeeping. Share this. So as a reminder, that the session is being recorded. The recording will be provided on the NPA website later. And if you have any questions, you can always put them in the chat. And towards the end, we'll have some saved time as well for Q&A. Any additional resources will be available to you as the NPA resource library. There will be some links which will be posted in the chat, so please keep an eye on that as well. The speakers, they have their LinkedIn profiles that is on the Equity Summit website. So if you want to reach out to them or look out at their experience, please, you can use that link. And I will stop my screen share. So as I mentioned that, if you have any questions during the session, please put that in the chat, and then we, read those questions. There might be some questions which we can answer during the session, during the discussion, but we'll have probably a reserved time for Q&A at the end. And these are sensitive topics which we are discussing. So if you feel that you need assistance, please do not hesitate to reach out to your postdoc office or appropriate office at your institution. These offices are there for your help, and you should take advantage of that. And again, as a reminder, this session is being recorded and will be available on the NPA website. With that, it is my pleasure to introduce our speakers for this session. And today we are joined by Katelyn Russell, who is the internal project manager at AmplifyBio and vice chair of NPA Postdoc Council, which is a new NPA project, which maybe Katelyn can tell a little bit about. And then Irene Hulede, who's Director of Education at American Society of Microbiology. Sarina Kajani, who's Senior Scientist at AstraZeneca. And Kimiko Krieger, who's a Postdoc Associate at Baylor College of Medicine. And to get started, I will invite our panelists to add to their introduction if they wish, and tell us what does thriving as a postdoc mean to them and how DEI is a part of it. We can kind of go in that same order, like Katelyn, Irene, Sarina, and Kimiko.
Perfect. Okay, I'll kick us off. Hi, everybody. I'm Katelyn Russell, like he said, and I am an internal project manager for AmplifyBio. That's my current position, but I transitioned out of my postdoc about 2.5 months ago. So I'm newly transitioned out of my postdoc. And then, like he mentioned, for the NPA, just a quick plug-in for the Postdoctoral Council, which is a new initiative that the NPA is trying to push to really get a current postdoc perspective. So please, please, please reach out to that. It's a great organization, a part of the NPA. So for me, thriving as a postdoc meant being where my feet were. I realized through my PhD career transition into my postdoc, I couldn't do everything, and trying to space out my mind to do everything was nearly impossible. So I had a great mentor who gave me some great reflectives, but her best advice on a way to thrive in your postdoc is be where your feet are. If my feet are at work, my feet are working, and I'm focused on and if I'm home, I'm at home with my child, with my husband, focused on them. And that's kind of how I learned to thrive in my postdoc. Keep in mind, I became a first-time mom at my postdoc. So I had a lot of learning to do that really influenced how I was going to either thrive in my postdoc or barely make it through and kind of just survive. How DEI played a big factor in that is through all of the different DEI initiatives from the NIH grants, McNair grants, and everything, pretty much supported my undergraduate career, my postdoctoral career, and my PhD and postdoctoral career, where I was on diversity supplements. I sat on a ton of DEI boards. So DEI played a large factor in how I thrived in my postdoc, because it wasn't just creating a diverse environment of people that looked like me or didn't look like me, looked different versions of me, but also making an inclusive environment that was supportive. So it's not just getting someone who looks like me in a higher level position, it's creating that supportive environment for them to be where your feet are, is my kickoff statement for everybody.
Great. Thank you, Katelyn. Irene, do you want to go next?
Okay, great. Thank you. Good afternoon or good morning, wherever you are located. My name again is Irene Hulede, and I'm the Education Director at the American Society for Microbiology, and also co-principal investigator for the annual Biomedical Research Conference for Minoritized Scientists. We just held our conference. We just wrapped it up last week, and so I'm very excited to join you today. So as you can tell from my introduction, I am not a postdoc. I have been with ASM for about 30 years now, and I've managed many programs within the scientific organization, from trainees, including postdocs and faculty and so on. So for me, what I bring to the table is the role that professional societies will play in really helping postdocs to succeed in their career trajectory. So I have been involved in NPA for a very long time, and I'm very privileged to have the opportunity to work with Tom a lot closer, so that we as professional societies can really take a strong stand in how we support postdocs. So at least for me, my initial goal is to really work closely with postdocs to have them aspire in leadership positions within your various professional societies. So within ASM, I run several postdoc programs working with different institutions. And now as the co-PI for Abrahams, one of the things that we really look for from the postdocs community is to come to a place like Abrahams and serve as judges, as mentors to the undergraduates, things that you can use to enhance your own CV so that it will help you network and make it to the next level that you are looking to do. We are also really looking at postdocs to also give scientific talks. So I know with NPA, the postdocs, it's all disciplines. And that's why, you know, the marriage with Abrahams becomes even stronger, because Abrahams is 12 different scientific disciplines. So anything that we can do as professional society, focusing on microbiology, and then my different hats being with Abrahams, it really gives you a good spectrum of how we can work together, and whatever I can do to support postdocs. My love is doing all of this stuff. That's why I've been at ASM for 30 years. So I'm happy to be here, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Irene. Sarina, do you want to go next?
Yes. Hi, everybody. My name is Sarina Kajani, and I am a senior scientist here at AstraZeneca in Gaithersburg. I only recently just graduated to senior scientist. I was a postdoc for 3.5 years, and so recently just got into the senior scientist role. So I feel like a big girl. I think with like the postdoc and like PhD, you always feel like you're a student, and you're always like trying to get to the next step. And I think what thriving for a postdoc meant for me was realizing that when I was doing my PhD, that seemed like the hardest thing that I was doing at the time. And that when you go into a postdoc, it almost feels like a PhD on steroids. But what I realized through that time is that I have the trust in myself that I got through the PhD. And now this is just leveling up, because not to sound, I suppose, on the like, in a negative light, but like life gets harder. We have different challenges as your levels go up. Katelyn just mentioned that she became a first-time mom. Congratulations, by the way. But like, I can't imagine what it would be like to do this as well as having a baby at home. That's not me right now. So I think just having the trust in yourself to be able to to have the confidence in knowing I've gone through hardship before, I know I can do this too. And as the song in Annie goes, the sun will rise tomorrow, or the sun will come out tomorrow. Just having that positive outlook does change how you feel about what you're doing. And so I find that really helped in my adventure as a postdoc. I think as well, going in light of DEI and diversity and inclusion, especially for an international company such as this AstraZeneca, we have sites here in Gaithersburg, in Sweden and in the UK. So it's quite an ethnically diverse group of people that you have to work with. There's a lot of different people. Something that might be innocuous to me might seem quite insulting to another group of people. So it's just being cognizant of the people that you're speaking to, and managing your P's and Q's. And then I think though, one of the internal initiatives that we had here, and really getting to the grips with what does diversity and inclusion mean, is that we had this initiative called Pass the Torch, whereby you had to find someone within either your immediate group or outside of your group and ask them, what does diversity and inclusion mean? Because if you ask 10 people what that means, it's going to be different for everybody else. And understanding from people's perspective what diversity and inclusion does mean. So for me, diversity and inclusion is having a multitude of different faces, but also understanding their culture and their perspectives, because that's what makes science good. I come from a biology background. So having that input and that perspective means that people think about things in different way. I don't know if you've ever had that thing where someone has said something really profound and you're like, wow, I never thought of it that way. And that changed the trajectory of how you manage your experiments, or even how you think about science in general. And so I think that's really, really important. And it's, again, to what Irene was saying about leadership, you have to be the change that does it, because it can feel like people of ethnic minorities, and I don't think it's an ethnic minority here in this specific group, but that it's oh, why is it always up to us to be the people that talk about this? But if we don't speak up, it doesn't happen, and change won't happen unless it starts with you. So yeah, that's all I have to say on that.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Sarina. And then we have Kimiko, and I also wanted to mention that Kimiko was one of the postdocs at NPA Pilot Impact Fellowship Program. So, and then, yeah, Kimiko, you can go ahead.
Thank you, Vipul. And hello to everyone on the call this afternoon. Yes, my name is Kimiko Krieger. I am a postdoc at Baylor College of Medicine. Honestly, when we think about DEI as far as my postdoc experience, so purposely moved to a city in Houston. I moved to Houston. Houston is the most diverse city. I guess now in the rankings, we actually are #1 most diverse city in the country. But in academia, it does not reflect the same, which is a big struggle across the whole board. It's not even just in our diverse city in Houston or New York, it's everywhere. And so the biggest thing what I've learned from my PhD is how to start grassroots, really start from the bottom and really build things. As when I was a grad student, starting, 7-8 years ago, that was unheard of. I was turned down by everyone, including my own chancellor, to try to figure out ways. Now, 8 years later, everyone's talking about DEI because people see the importance of it. So that just goes to show that even in a small span of time of 8 years, how much things can drastically change, especially within the past 2 years to the pandemic. Me as a postdoc, because I started right before the pandemic, it was very different for me to be able to spread my roots and really get to know my institution, Houston as a whole, because of the pandemic shutting down. So it was just this reawakening happened for me after getting back in the lab, trying to figure out, okay, I have to relearn everything around me, but not see so many people around that look like me either, even though I'm in a diverse space. So for me, it's a little bit different. I still struggle with that. DEI is just not about, the minoritized populations here in the US, but also looking at the science community, in which I'm a molecular biologist. we're the most diverse, one of the most diverse fields. So it's not that we don't have it. We have to use how to we have to know how to use how to leverage it. We have to know how to respect one another, really get, familiar with culture, but also growing to embrace it. Because once we embrace that together, we can actually move forward, but also understanding that you're not alone, right? So for me, I might be the only one in my hallway, one of the only ones in my department, probably the only diverse postdoc in my apartment, comparing. But that's okay, because I still have other people that I also connect with. There are other minority science groups within my institution that I also connect with. There are other people within staff positions that I also connect with. So it's not to say that it can't be done. I think one, it's being done. Two, at a rapid pace now, which I'm really excited about. But more looking forward to see how can we break that ground for leadership. So it's not that, we don't have just enough leadership. It's the fact that you have to be in that right space and talk to the right people to get there. But how can we break that system? How can we break that down and really get forward to getting towards a more open route, so that where we're in not just bottom level positions trying to climb up, but we also have those people in those positions that are higher up. So finding allies. Biggest thing about pushing DEI forward is not just by the minoritized group always talking about it, but having the allies and maybe in a majority and moving forward and saying, hey, I see you, I recognize what you're doing, here's how I can help, here's how we can make things better, here's how I can use my power for leverage and move that forward. So I think allyship has been something that has been a staple for me moving through now the postdoc.
Thank you. So, kind of building on that, and thank you everyone, for sharing your thoughts on what thriving as a postdoc mean, which obviously mean different things to different people, and what DEI is to you. It's also, again, I guess, Sarina, you said like DEI means different things to different people. It's kind of just building on that introduction and your thoughts. A quick question I have is like, or well, not really quick, but a question, it can be a long answer. But how do we, what are your thoughts on like ensuring that equity, inclusion, and belonging is part of the postdoc experience? Postdoc experience is like, that's what thriving as a postdoc, it's kind of go hand in hand if we have a good experience. So how do we ensure that DEI is part of that experience, or like is part of like the research culture in general, and not that one HR session you go and attend? And if we don't have to go in the order we started, but we can. So, but if someone has a immediate answer, they can always go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, I feel like we all, as soon as we all heard the question, we're like, we all can comment on this. I'm happy to kick us off and keep the discussion going, just because before our CAMS was SACNAS, which is another minority conference. And this came up a lot of just the discussion of like, it's not just diversity in places, it's equity, inclusion, and having that wide acceptance that there's different cultures and different cultures won't do what your culture does, and having the respect for it. But what I loved that Kimiko highlighted that I think goes for equity and inclusion is having allies that don't look like you. Having allies that are unfortunately benefiting from the system, that are like, this is not great. Like, this is terrible. And having the space to have uncomfortable conversations frequently. Like, it doesn't fall on my shoulders to constantly be like, that was not ideal. That was not great. I'm not here to police anybody. I'm here to be like, we all need to embrace having comfortable conversations repeatedly, and it doesn't fall on me to lead the uncomfortable conversations. It falls on my allies that don't look like me, that are benefiting from the system, to be like, dude, that's not great. Like, that's not kosher. That's not working for everybody, and leaving the space for that uncomfortable conversation to happen is my kickoff for that question.
Thank you so much, Katelyn, for pointing that out. That's one thing, I guess for me and my personality, I have to call things out for what it is. I can't sit and watch something just go terribly wrong because someone's either being offensive or making someone feel uncomfortable. I think the biggest thing is to understand that you can call out incorrect, or at least call out and identify things without being disrespectful. There is a way to do it. And, you know, one of those things I've learned during my PhD is learning ouch training and understanding, like, sometimes you might say, ouch, what did you mean by that? Starting to open up that field of void right there, because at the end of the day, it's just like, you don't want to be condescending. You don't want to be super aggressive, but at the same time, try to pick people's brain and understand, like, where did that come from? How can we figure out, like, where's the common ground here? Because it's like, you know, there's many stereotypes, there's many different things that people see on TV, or maybe just negative interactions you have, or maybe just people having a bad day. Often that too. But the biggest thing is understanding, how can we get on this level playing field to move forward? Because the more we have this friction and not being able to call out and really identify some of those things, the more these things get pushed under the rug, get pushed under the side, and then we never get past and grow forward. The biggest thing to me about DEI spells growth. It's all about growth. And especially when you're in a postdoc, it's all about growth. Your growth is dependent on how you're going to move forward to this next job, but it's really coming from the inside. At the end of the day, the support system is what you need. And you need, in order to be able to build that, you have to be able to identify on some type of playing field. You may not like the person, you may not always work with the person, but just being able to understand where they come from, I think that's like a great way to start.
Just to echo what Kimiko is saying, we've spoken before before this panel, and every time Kimiko speaks, I'm like, preach, like, oh my gosh, she's so eloquent, it's great. But just to echo what you're saying, I think it can always come across as we're on the back foot. And as a result of that, whenever we try to make change, it can be like almost annoying, or like, why are you being a pain in the butt about this? I think tackling this with a curiosity for understanding the other person. And it's annoying that, like, it's almost like we have to do this constantly, but even just with like other relationships, not outside of like work and training, it's having a curiosity for what that person is trying to say. Because when you understand their perspective, it is a lot easier to shift how you then react to them, but react in a way that they are able to listen to you, not just hear you. And then maybe just bringing a bit more fun, because I know this is a serious conversation, but I find, like, in light with the inclusion part, especially if you have a group of people that are diverse and trying to understand people's cultures, we do like a potluck. Like, Thanksgiving is coming up, and we do like an ethnic potluck. So you bring the food that is from your culture. And so, like, my mom is Indian, and so I'll always bring like a curry or something, and we can talk about that. But I was raised Irish, so I'm very culturally Irish. So that, like, and that starts a conversation. And it's really getting to know people, because I think when you get to know someone on a personal level, it's very hard to dislike them unless they're like not a nice person. But like, when it comes to this kind of conversation, I think when you do know them, it's kind of like, it's hard to be combative.
So I second everything my colleagues on this panel have said. One thing that I want to emphasize is that there is a lot of power in community. And I think that, you know, that's why I love this forum with the National Postdoc Association, because I've run several programs where, you know, I used to run a fellowship program where we had individual postdocs at different labs, but they felt so alone. And then at some point, we changed some things a little bit and found ways to just bring them together as a cohort and as a forum. And it was amazing how having one person just having a voice, there was so much different kind of vibe once we brought 6 or 7 postdocs together as a group. And so as we transition into all of this space with the DEI and all that, the more we come together as a community and speak with one voice and also push for what we believe in, the more we are going to make inroads to the bigger group or the bigger community, I should say.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of push about DEI, DEIJ part. And Kimiko, you mentioned that, there's a big change, or I guess some change for the 8-year period, like, when you started talking about DEI, but like now it is, there's a lot more push and initiatives about DEI. But what is your comment on that? Is the needle, like, is it moving? Is actually all these efforts or all these initiatives actually working? And especially, are they working for postdocs? Because that's a population which is not necessarily, it is not through department, or it is like through one person. It is not through institution. So are all the efforts, like institution-wide efforts or association-wide efforts, are they working for postdocs?
Yeah.
And I'll just say, like, I'll just say that if, you want to mention if there's a particular example, which is, a really a good success story, or like, a failure as well, that might be helpful too, if you have one.
Yeah, sure. Yes, as postdocs, we're like this big in-between group of, we're not students, we're not faculty, sometimes considered staff. And so a lot of times we do get overshadowed with some of these efforts. It's like pretty broad, I would say. There's always this broad brush of, oh, we accept all backgrounds, oh, we're diverse, we're inclusive. But when it comes down to policies, I feel like that needle is kind of wavering. Now we have pushed the needle far when we're talking about access to research funding. Now NIH has initiatives for diverse candidates, looking at the predoctoral, postdoctoral, and now even faculty level, early investigator level. Now you're starting to see this robust amounts of funding come through for, diverse candidates. But when we're talking about an institutional level, that's where I feel like the improvement really needs to dig in. Because while we may have those funding opportunities, we still need to have a supportive environment to grow and to be able to be productive. And some of those things, to be honest, I don't see as much. Now we see that on a student group level. That's awesome. We see that because they're at the grassroots really pushing it forward. But that gap between, okay, we have a student group, we have advisement, and then now we have this bigger, larger structure that is greater admin. That is where we need to really push through. Because while now you're starting to see the advent of diversity offices, DEI initiatives, vice chancellors, assistant chancellors, all these different positions being created. We're seeing creation of position, but not necessarily elevation for the postdocs. That's where we're missing. And, I appreciate for those that really do serve in those positions, because I know it's hard for them because they have to play this double-edged sword all the time of, okay, I'm trying to make it through on my initiative, but at the same time, I still have to respect leadership. So it's very difficult for them to push through. But if we make enough noise, there could be something to say. There could be something that can really push that needle forward. What that is, I have no clue yet, and I'm still trying to figure that out. So while I'm here on my postdoc, I'll still be investigating that. I'll let you know if the needle moves. But for me, yes in funding, no in institution.
I can chime in. Thank you for pointing out the diversity supplements. I received the NIH diversity supplement for my pre-doc. That was from heart, lung, blood. And then in my postdoc work, I had a diversity supplement through NIHS, so Environmental Health Sciences. I probably should add, I am a molecular biologist and a toxicologist because everyone added their degrees. That being said, I was the only one at OSU that received a diversity supplement. Didn't matter if that was a pre-doc to postdoc. That was hard to take. like a major research university, and I was somehow the only one that received a diversity supplement. That was tough, but I at least had funding. Like, I was kosher and comfortable in that aspect. So I agree, the funding is becoming more apparent that like there's resources to support diversity students on an institutional level. They're making the positions, the changes aren't happening right now. Like, they're learning that there's resources. So institutions are like, hey, that's free money that we could get for having the students there. But is that an environment that students want to be in? Is the parallel question to ask. Like, I was very, 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 very fortunate where I was at. I was very well protected by a very good mentor. I was in a very good department that supported me. But I, again, was the only diversity recipient at a major research institution, and that's not okay. So needle pushing, money's talking, institutions need to work on being a little bit better on receiving it, but making the environments more inclusive. So getting there, there's a lot of room for improvement.
Right.
So I come from a background where I did my PhD in Ireland and then moved over here to do my postdoc. And because I'm in a company, they're pretty good at having diversity and inclusion as part of their initiatives. When I was doing my postdoc, there was a group of, I suppose, 20 of us, but we're in all different disciplines. So like a quarter of them would be in oncology, a quarter of us were in basic research with R&D in biopharma, a third of them were in cell processing and signaling, cell processing and something else. I can't remember what the S stands for. But I think as a company, we're quite good at pushing like inclusion and diversity, but that's because we're a company. We have the funding, the resources to push these initiatives because that's what our demographic needs and wants. We want to be bringing the best and the brightest. And that doesn't matter where that comes from, as long as we're getting the best. And I think that that's when it's pushing the needle towards including more people. But unfortunately, like when I think America's probably furthering in line with like inclusion and diversity, because there are these like initiatives like from the NIH and these grants. In Ireland, though, we're becoming a more multicultural country. But I was probably one of the few brown people doing my postdoc or a PhD, and I think that comes down to access. And what Kimiko was talking about earlier is that do people from ethnic backgrounds have the same access, the same schooling opportunities, essentially? And so while I didn't really answer the question, I think that from a company standpoint, there is that. But when I did an industry-based postdoc, so that helped. Whereas I'm not familiar with university, etc.
Irene, I see your hand is raised, but also you mentioned that you have been in the field for a long time. So I guess you probably can paint a bigger picture of how things have changed. So do you want to comment?
Yeah, so I mean, I would say that, yes, we are making strides to do better. And I think especially after the George Floyd incident, everybody was jumping on the DEI bandwagon. And I hear my other colleagues, especially I think Kimiko said something about at the institution level, and Katelyn said something about being the only one. I think that one of the things that is a little bit of a struggle is that sometimes for these institutions, you have the one or two people who champion this. And if the one or two people are no longer there, who is really going to be the spokesperson? And I think that sometimes, I mean, it's a catch-22. Sometimes you win some, you lose some, because sometimes with all of us being all behind DEI, and then we hire a chief diversity officer, and then everybody thinks that the chief diversity officer, that's their job to make sure everything is corrected. Although I would say, like a place like ASM, one of the things that our CEO has mandated is that it's not just one person taking the lead. Everybody is part of every department's job description to make sure that they incorporate DEI into something, right? So with that, then the accountability is higher and everybody has to try harder instead of everyone looking at Irene to say, Irene, you are the one in charge of this, right? And then Irene just does it because she's passionate about it. I think we have to move away from that and hold everybody accountable. There should be no reason why a huge institution like OSU, there should be one person who knows about the diversity supplement and one person who gets it, right? All the faculty should be talking to their postdocs, their graduate students. I mean, they should be talking to graduate students about it so that they even know before they become postdocs. And those are some of the places that I think we are missing the mark. And the other thing I would say is that, you know, for me in my profession, I make sure that no matter what success we have, I never get too comfortable because I think we are too quick to feel that, oh, we've done it. Like for the first George Floyd, for the first year, everybody was doing DEI. I mean, everybody had it on their webpage and all that. How many of us have updated it since then? How many of us are doing more since then? You know, so we can never get too comfortable with measuring the success because it's a long process and, you know, we are not there yet.
Guess we have, you know, only a little bit more time left. So I have this final question, which we can kind of keep it kind of brief before we jump into Q&A from audience. So I'll remind the audience, if you have any questions or comments or anything you want to share, please, you can put that in the chat. So like, you know, for our panelists, do you have any, you know, advice for postdocs on like, you know, practical skills on building their DEI literacy and or like strategies for postdocs where they can build on you know, their DEI experience, which can be helpful for the institutions, but also in future because postdocs, as we know, they are like leaders of tomorrow. So if there are any practical tips you can give them, how they can include DEI in their work or just general, like, you know, personal or professional experience.
I think one easy way I think would be to get with organizations like the National Research Mentoring Network. They have resources full of, you know, dealing with microaggressions, dealing, you know, how to understand what DEI means and, you know, how to navigate difficult conversations, finding those type of resources. Because at the end of the day, difficult conversations have to happen to be able to move forward, but also building up on some of those online resources that we have now. Many different organizations now have not just the instructional videos just to go through, you know, your training, but also like to move forward. Now we have like different funding mechanisms with the NIH and why you have to show how have you moved forward with diversity within your institution. Like getting familiar with your diversity office to really see what are these policies? Do we even have policies in place? How are they enforced? How can we start to build things better? So I think if you have an institution that has a diversity office, two, getting with big national mentoring networks that have these type of resources is very helpful. Another thing too, a lot of people do a lot of different surveys to kind of gauge how things have progressed, but we never hear about what happens after those surveys. Big thing, another suggestion is for, you know, for those that surveyed admin to reach back to some of the trainees and ask those difficult questions. What can we do better? How has your experience been? Because there have been plenty of people that would tell me all the time, like, you know, how their experience is, and mine is no different. And I might have came 5 years after them, and it's still the same. So while we're still building on policy, it's not translating well. And I think that's the thing. We need to figure out, where is this gap between policy, enforcement, and engagement?
Okay, I can chime in real quick. I think for practical things, for postdocs especially, SACNAS offers the postdoctoral leadership. I'm forgetting the word. Oh, Institute. The PLI every year apply to that. It is fantastic for postdocs who are minorities to learn more about your culture, how to drive your culture in your science and where you work right now. And it was just a great community to kind of like let loose and not have to worry about someone judging you. So apply to that. It was amazing. And it's an all expense paid like trip. Well, not all expense. They cover your flight, hotel, and registration for the conference. That is something super practical. Loved it. Second would be, like Kimiko said, getting involved with your DEI, learning what's happening, but making a difference where you're currently at in your department, asking the tough questions of being like, this isn't working. Like, I need help with this. I'm not feeling comfortable in these sorts of situations, and kind of leaving it as an open-ended. Thank you for including SACNAS leadership programs in the comments. Next, guard yourself. Like, you are a postdoc, you cannot do everything. Do what you can and then protect yourself at it. If it is killing you that day, you don't have to do it. You can champion it tomorrow. You can lean in on your ally to be like, hey, I'm struggling right now. I need help. And I think it's being brave enough to admit that, like, you need help. You need some type of support, and you don't have to do it today. Learned that at the SACNAS meeting, and it was really inspirational to hear, because I was always like, I need to champion this. I'm getting exhausted, but I don't want someone else to be in this experience. Like, I need to champion it, and I wasn't protecting myself. So do that first, and then do everything else to make it better for somebody else or yourself. Lastly, the NIH has all those fundings. They have a lot of diversity initiatives. If your mentor is not pushing it, your university is not pushing it, Google and find it for yourself. That was the other thing, is I was really lucky. I had a mentor who knew about it in my pre-doc. So during my PhD, I told my mentor when I joined, I was like, I'm applying for this. This is money that can go in your R1 that's going to support me, and we're doing it. So if somebody doesn't know it, unfortunately, it falls on you to find it. Thankfully, Google's amazing, and like, it will find an answer for you. So there are communities. Unfortunately, it's on you to seek it out, but SACNAS is a great start. AberCams was my first ever conference as an undergrad. Love AberCams. Go to them and ask them questions, being like, I can't find funding for this. I need support on this. I don't know how to have this conversation. Those are your champions that'll help you outside of your institution. And that is my practical advice.
Kate, and when you said like you have to like champion for yourself first, I thought about, you know, when you're in an airplane and it says for the adult to put their mask on first, it's exactly that. Like, you do need to look after yourself, because if you're tired and wrecked, you're no good to anybody, and most importantly, you're not good to yourself. But just to echo what the guys were saying, that like, you do have to champion for yourself. This is something that needs to keep moving. You need to be consistent. And it's exactly what Irene was saying, that if there's a champion that's there and they're gone and then there's no one to take their place, that breaks that line of communication. I think in terms of like practicality, if you guys have like lab meetings or like a meeting with the group, have an I&D section at the end. Has to be 5 minutes being like, this is what's going on campus. I know that, like, especially this year and within our company, there was a big push for Diwali, which is the light festival. And that was great. People got to experience the culture, the food, the dancing, the lights. And if that's something that's being promoted on a campus, you guys can say that at a lab meeting. Maybe people don't know about it. So it's, even though you're championing it, putting it in forums that doesn't necessarily have I&D, but you can let people know. And once you get that conversation going, it starts a fire. That's all I want to say on that.
Irene, do you have any strategies or practical tips for postdocs?
Nothing more to add. I think they've covered everything, but I don't know. I think one of the things I would say, and I think Katelyn mentioned it, you have to put you first. I think this mental health, mental wellness is real, and we all have to put ourselves first. We need the energy before we can do this work right.
I guess with that, we have only a few minutes left, but if someone has any question for our speakers, please, you can put that in the chat. While you're thinking of a question, I can just mention that if you are not a member of NPA yet, please check if your institute is a member of NPA, and then you can become an NPA member for free. Also, the next session, it will be a different Zoom link, which Amy has put that in the chat. It will also be in your calendar link. That next session is on moving on. So like step while you're finishing your postdoc. So that will be also important. So yeah, the membership detail is, the link is in the website. So you can check if you can, if your institute is a member, but you can reach out to your postdoc office and ask that as well. With that, let's give like maybe a couple, like 1 minute, maybe a couple of seconds for people if they have any question to think about it.
I always find myself so reinvigorated and motivated after these sessions. I'm like, yeah, we're going to take on the world.
Always. I came back from Puerto Rico right before ABRCAMS and I was like, I could do so many things. And then I went to work and I was like, just kidding. I can do like 2 of the 12 things I planned on doing. But for DEI work, there's a lot to be done, especially like diversity is getting there. I think inclusion and equity are like our next fun puzzle piece to tackle.
I guess seems like if we don't have any questions, I would like, to thank everyone and thank our speakers to, share their opinion, their perspectives, but also, also thank our audience for joining. And obviously it's like, preaching the choir thing, because everyone who is here today obviously is interested in this topic and wants to push the DEI initiatives wherever they are and they can. With that, I would like to thank everyone again. And in 10 minutes, we have the final session for the summit. So please join that as well. And, if there are any resources you want to share with us, you can always reach out to the NPA staff. And there's an NPA resource library where the stuff will be shared as well. Thank you, everyone.